Hello and welcome back to the channel, guys. My name is Dan and I'm here to bring you another FPL video. In this one, we're going to be looking at our differential picks for game week 29 in the short to medium term. So some of them are a lot shorter term than others, but it's just to try and give some options essentially and put some statistics out there for you guys if you're looking to try and gain some rank with some of those differential picks. So if you do enjoy the content, guys, please do remember to drop that thumbs up button below the video. But let's jump into the first player on the list here then, and that is Saeed Benrahma of West Ham United. So we know the struggles that West Ham United have had this season. Of course, they're fighting in the relegation area, and we have Southampton at home and Newcastle at home in game week 29. So I don't feel like this is the best pairing of fixtures. We know defensively Newcastle, yes, they've made some mistakes recently, but they've been pretty solid throughout the season. Southampton, a little bit of maybe an easier fixture that you could say because they are, of course, fighting for relegation as well. But I think both fixtures provide opportunity for attacking returns, especially because they are home fixtures. Now, Benrahma only comes in at £5.5 million. There are, of course, some mid-price midfielders a little bit more expensive than that, maybe such as Matoma, March, or McAllister from Brighton, for example, which you may opt for as opposed to a major differential in Benrahma. But he is only 0.8% owned, and all players featured on this video today should be less than 5% owned to make the shortlist, essentially. So points scored this season, he's got 72. It's not the best, it's not the worst. It's a pretty, I would say, a consistent number. He has got 4 goals, 3 assists. In that time frame, he has managed to create 3 big chances and 34 normal chances. Of course, this is across the whole season, so it's a very, very large pool of data. And then the XG per 90 and XA per 90, they're reasonable. I think for his price point, they are reasonable. And of course, we've got to consider that he is on some set pieces, right? I feel like penalties will probably be in this man's lap. I'm not sure anybody else on the pitch will take them. We've seen Jared Bowen make mistakes, Antonio make mistakes. So I feel like Benrahma is probably the safest option for David Moyes. And again, while he's on topic, I suppose, Southampton at home is the fixture that I think David Moyes is looking at and thinking, I need to win this, otherwise my job's on the line, right? So I think it's going to be an interesting game. I feel like there's attacking returns, like I say, across both fixtures, but I think the Southampton at home one is the reason why I've gone for a West Ham attacker. If we have a look at the shorter term fixtures, or say the medium term fixtures here, from game week 30 through to game week 33, bit of a mixed bag. In game week 30 and game week 32, I think both of these fixtures are okay. Fulham away is maybe a little bit more difficult than we first maybe considered at the beginning of the season. And Bournemouth away, I think, is one of the easiest fixtures still, regardless of home or away. Arsenal at home, Liverpool at home. They're a little bit more tricky. They are, of course, at home, so maybe you can get away with playing him and potentially hope for 1 or 2 attacking returns across those 2 games. But worst case scenario, when you're only paying for £5.5 million for a midfielder like this, he potentially just fills a bench slot in those trickier games anyway. So he was first up on the list, but let me know in the comments below if you are looking at Saeed Benrahma or any other West Ham assets moving into game week 29. On the second on the list then, we have got this man here, Rodrigo of Leeds. I'd say in terms of the differential, he is 4% owned now. I think he's been as high as nearly 20% owned when he was in the sort of, the form of his life, if you like, sort of more towards the beginning of the season when Bamford was out, when Leeds didn't have Rutter, for example, that was signed in January up front. This is the only kind of downside, I guess, of Rodrigo is, yes, he's a differential at 4% owned. It's more for me about the minutes and where he plays on the pitch. If Bamford gets 120 minutes or 100 minutes up front, I feel like Rodrigo's appeal lessens a little bit. I feel like most of his output is better from an FPL point of view when he's playing as an out-of-position midfielder in that number 9 role. So we'll have to see what happens and how Leeds line up, I guess. But if you wanted to take a chance over these next 5 weeks, not just game week 29 specifically, I could get behind it, absolutely. He's only 6.3 million. Again, when you look at other assets around that price point, the Brighton boys obviously are very, very close to this as well. So maybe they are a little bit better overall. But again, if you've already got maybe one of them and you're looking at a slightly different option, I think, again, this man does tick all the boxes. Now, game week 29 specifically, Arsenal away, of course, we know that's going to be a tricky fixture. But then, of course, he's got Nottingham Forest at home. So it's one negative fixture at the beginning of the week for a potentially really, really good fixture in the second half, I suppose you could say, of game week 29. Then moving straight into game week 30, it's Crystal Palace at home. So I feel like definitely attacking returns across those 3 games in those 2 game weeks could definitely occur. From game week 31 onwards, again, it's a bit of a mixed bag. They've got Liverpool at home in 31. Of course, notably, they also play in game week 32. So if you're someone that doesn't have a free hit chip, for example, and 32 is where some key teams are blanking in terms of City, Manchester United, of course, Brighton as well, and Chelsea, we can see that actually you could potentially load up on some players this week, take advantage of the double, while also looking ahead and taking advantage of game week 32. And as we've seen with Ben Rama, he had Bournemouth away. We've got Rodrigo here with Fulham away. So quite favourable fixtures in game week 32 specifically as well. And then in 33, it's Leicester at home. So, the guy has scored 11 goals this season. He's in overall a really, really good position, I think. Like I say, my only doubt on him is about where he plays on the pitch and how many minutes he gets in those kind of out of position roles, or what he can do from a midfielder point of view as opposed to that number 9. So something to consider, but I do like him overall in terms of his numbers. Moving into the third option then here, we have another midfielder. I feel like most of my picks came down to the midfield, I suppose, because I felt like that was where most transfers were happening, of the likes of Odegaard and some people removing Saka, for example. It felt like midfielders seemed to be on the chopping block the most this week, which is why I've focused on this area. But of course, yes, Barnes, 6.7 million. Again, we're creeping up in price point now a little bit, but he is only 1.7% owned, and this is essentially a differentials video, right? So his XG and his XA, they're not too bad per 90. His goals actually are pretty good for Leicester. He's pretty similar in terms of Maddison overall for what contributions he's made to Leicester. So I think he's gone under the radar a little bit across the board. I think most people would be focusing on Maddison as opposed to Barnes. But if you can't stretch quite so far as Maddison, I think he's 8 or 8.1 million, then there is an alternative, in my opinion, in Harvey Barnes. He's got some great numbers here, as you can see. And if we have a look at the next sort of set of 5 fixtures here, okay, they do have Manchester City away in game week 31, they're in between. But the double looks really promising. Crystal Palace away and Aston Villa at home. Bournemouth at home in game week 30. We've then got Wolves in 32. So again, another playing player with a promising fixture in 32 here. And Leeds away in game week 33. So overall, again, I can't help but feel like he definitely is an alternative to Maddison. I don't necessarily feel like he may be able to match him in the double game week specifically, but who knows? Over the 5 weeks, we know that fixtures can create form. So I think he's definitely one to watch as well. And it's worth noting as well, 102 points overall scored in terms of midfield, which is really not too bad. He's, again, been pretty consistent. We know his minutes are pretty solid. And when you compare that to the other picks previously I've already mentioned here, to kind of be breaking the 100 points is nothing to be sniffed at, right? So very, very positive numbers for Harvey Barnes. Then if we go into the next pick, it is yet again another midfielder, and it is Morgan Gibbs-White of Nottingham Forest. This man, I think, has got a really good relationship with the man on screen as well here, Brennan Johnson. I think that you see that from the assist numbers on screen now, where he's got 7 assists, 2 goals. His expected assists per 90 are actually higher than his XG. But again, we have a look at the points total, 91, so not too shy of 100. And of course, he is only 5.5 million as well. I would say he's pretty nailed on. He's only 0.6% owned, and he's on a lot of set pieces as well, which is why I think his XA per 90 is so high. The only difficulty I have with Forest is that I feel like he is a much shorter term option. Of course, game week 32 is a little bit trickier for Forest with Liverpool away. They've also got United at home in 31 and Brighton at home in 33. So I feel like there's a bit of a fixture drop-off post-game week 30. But if you were, again, looking at a differential pick specifically for game week 29, and you were okay with benching him through those tough fixtures, Wolves at home and Leeds away are very good fixtures. And of course, for Gibbs-White, as we know, he's essentially previous club was Wolves, so I feel like he's going to be well up for this challenge. He'll be well up for that game, and of course, it's at the City ground as well with a crowd behind him. So I feel like the numbers could come from him, to be honest, in this game week. And again, this is a differential option. It's not somebody I don't think that's going to be in many teams. He's definitely far far from template. It's just a question of, do you back him over, like I say, some of the more popular picks, right? So yeah, I think I trust in the numbers here with him. I definitely think that this is maybe a week to jump onto him. But like I say, I think game week 31 to 33 is where it gets a little bit tricky for owning him. And last but not least, we do have a forward. Instead of a midfielder, we do have this man here in Isak from Newcastle United. Somebody that I sort of underestimated, I guess, a little bit. I have had him in my team previously, and I've always liked the look of him. But absolutely, I think the previous game weeks, he's done some business. He does seem to be the favourable pick now over Callum Wilson. I think Wilson just struggles with sickness, with injury. Of course, age comes to us all. And he is in the back end or twilight of his career, I guess. So Isak does need to get those more consistent minutes. Do I think he plays 180 minutes across both games? Probably not. I would estimate maybe around 150, maybe a little bit less. But we know that he's on penalties if he's on the pitch. Again, his numbers, the XG here, 0.82. Absolutely phenomenal stuff. And if you were looking at a budget option, maybe you are in the market of selling Harry Kane to free up some funds for, the likes of Salah or Bruno Fernandes or one of those options. Maybe you want to go for a budget striker. And I feel like, again, he fits that bill perfectly. Only 6.7 million, currently only 2.3% ownership. And he's scored 6 goals. So no assists on that. There's no kind of, big chances created. He seems to be on the end of everything as opposed to being much of a creator. But that's fine. That's why his XG numbers are so high. And we'd also see that, I think, on heat maps on where he is. He's a born poacher, I think, really. He's very much like Haaland in that sense that he gets many touches in the box. He's there to finish off a header or a tap-in or whatever it might be. But his finishing has been really, really positive so far from what I've seen of him. So I think he's a great option. The double game week is a little bit tricky. I think it's a mixed bag. Of course, Man United at home, we are without Casemiro, which I do feel like will expose us a little bit. Of course, McTominay, Fred, yes, they can fill in a defensive midfielder options. McTominay's pretty much, the form for Scotland from an attacking point of view has been fantastic. So maybe he slots in, maybe he performs really well from a defensive point of view to help the back four out. But I feel like we are susceptible, essentially, to a few goals here at St James's Park, so I think he could get something against United. And then you look at West Ham away. Yes, it's an away fixture, but it's a team that are fighting for relegation. Now, if they don't get a result against Southampton, you could argue that then this game becomes even more important for West Ham to try and get some points from, being a home fixture for them. So it could open up, the game could stretch, and I feel like this is where Isak, again, could take advantage of that. So I really like Newcastle's double game week overall from an attacking point of view here. You then look at the fixtures again from game week 30 to 33. He does play in 32. It's Tottenham at home, which you could say on paper is a little bit tricky, but they are now managerless. So could be a situation to take advantage of. But then game week 30, 31 and 33, I think are all very positive fixtures, albeit that they are all away. So overall, I think it's a very, very positive move. It's also worth taking into consideration with Newcastle United that they do still have some extra games to rearrange because of the EFL Cup. So there's, I guess, another upside there that, even though the graphic doesn't show it, holding on to these assets maybe longer term, you may get 1 or 2 extra fixtures between now and the end of the season as well. So that's my 5 differential picks, guys. I hope you found the content useful. I just wanted to put something out there that was maybe a little bit different as opposed to a kind of, it's similar format to a watch list, but just something that was focusing only on differentials. As I know some of you have been questioning who should you go for to essentially, give your team a chance of climbing up mini leagues or potentially gaining some ranks. And I feel like any one of these 5 individuals could definitely challenge some of those template and popular picks. But let me know in the comments below who your favourite pick is out of these 5, who else I may have missed off this list, who you're considering. And of course, last but not least, guys, if you really enjoyed the content, then please do subscribe to the channel. It's completely free. And of course, I will be doing a live stream tomorrow on the deadline, so feel free to join me on that. But thanks for tuning in, guys, for this video. I will see you in a stream or a video shortly. Thanks again. See you soon.